Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 26 of the Beer Enthusiasts. We have a very special one, especially for Firestone Walker as a brewery. This is their like earliest beer, right? This is like one of the first ones, if not one of the first beers they brewed. So
Yeah,
double
basically
barrel
their
ale.
flagship.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, double barrel ale. We're gonna get into this one. There's plenty to talk about. It's a unique beer, uh, unique recipe and things of that nature. So I've got my Firestone Walker little 10 ounce no neck
I'm
for
with
this
you.
one.
It's impossible not to do that. We use these for tasting practice a lot, and so now
Yeah,
it fits the exact beer that we're gonna drink.
that's I know, right? Even for this,
Yeah, even the
exactly.
Nonic styles, even English inspired styles. So
Yep, yeah, it's on point. So yeah, that's beautiful. All right, so recipe. This is going to be. They gave a lot of good information, and this also kind of uses a very unique kind of method of fermentation. So it's going to be a little bit of a presentation on this, but 5% ABV, 30 IBUs. They say they only have kettle hops, and it's Styrian, Golding, and Tradition hops. Malt is quite the malt bill. Two row, Crystal Light, Crystal Dark, Crystal 75, Munich malt, and chocolate malt. So tons of different kinds of malts, ale yeast, and then the fermentation part is what's really unique. The first, at least I'm assuming it's the first 85% of fermentation is in stainless steel. Actually, it could be the second, but it just on the website it reads fermentation is 85% in stainless steel. And then the other 15% of fermentation is in their Firestone Union oak barrels. And this is kind of you can look this up online. The pictures are really cool. But it's kind of loosely, not so loosely, but it's based on the Burton Union system, and it's this fermentation and conditioning system that uses these kind of individual oak barrels. Usually they're somewhere around like 60-ish gallons. They're positioned on their sides, kind of in a row, right next to each other. And in the Burton Union system, there's troughs above it and below it. For Firestone Walker, and the Burton Union systems have these swan necks that kind of take the beer up to the top trough as the kreuzen is happening and the yeast is highly active. It just kind of puts it up into the trough. The beer then kind of comes back down and gets recirculated into the barrels, and then the yeast kind of stays there and then can be harvested. They're going to only harvest the most viable, the most healthy yeast cells. Firestone Walkers looks a little bit different. It looks like they kind of have flexible tubing coming out of the top, and then they've got these metal buckets that are kind of hanging in front with another set of tubing going into those where I'm assuming they can then harvest from those. The beer in a Burton Union system eventually and gradually it will become bright. And really the two main reasons that this is done is, one, to be able to harvest yeast more easily. And and when you're the Burton Union system, the Yorkshire squares, all those kind of traditional fermentation systems are used in Britain. So they're going to be these British ale yeasts that are highly flocculent, and this kind of recycling helps to just keep anything that would flocculate out of suspension and putting it back into suspension, and then interacting with more of the beer to kind of keep it going. Um, so those are really kind of that's it in a nutshell. But it's really, I would look at pictures. It's a lot to explain. I think I listened to one person who is extremely smart, and there's just a lot going on. So
yeah,
go check it out, or at least listen to this and look at a picture. Maybe it'll make a little more sense. But it's a very complicated, and really it's quite the commitment on their part to use this kind of a fermentation process.
right. It's not a small brewery. It's not like they aren't looking for other ways to be even more efficient all the time. And so to hold
Right.
on to this kind of modified Burton Union system is really interesting. And I think two kind of important takeaways to remember are they're using like toasted, unused previously oak.
Hmm.
It's not spent spirit barrels or wine or whatever. They're not looking for that type of character. It's not like a barrel aged stout. It's just a, a vessel that can give you a little bit of wood character. We'll see if that comes through. Or and just to finish up fermentation. Basically, they're not really looking for like this big addition or whatever. And I did watch a video. Firestone Walker's website and their blog is really nice if you kind of poke
Yeah.
around through it. And there's some old videos about, they're not that old, but about DBA. And Matt Brindleson said that the beer spends about the first 12 hours in stainless, which would kind of comport to this 85-15 split, and then they'll transfer it to their kind of modified Burton Union system and finish out fermentation in there. And so it's probably, I mean, I bet they have it down to a really nice science at this point. But I'm sure there are times where maybe their yeast is not as lively in the beginning as they thought, and needs to be in stainless a little bit longer before going to oak or whatever. That would be the cellar person's job to kind of keep a watchful eye on that and make sure they got it right. But that video was a couple of years old, I think, and they said they brew this
Mm.
every week.
Wow.
And so obviously the demands of a brewery of that size, maybe that's switched a little bit, but they're making a lot of this beer and going through this really interesting system. So that's cool.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to sensory. Uh, crystal clear. I'm kind of seeing this kind of like bronzed orange kind of color.
Hmm. Yeah, it
So a
really
little
is. It's
off.
not,
Yeah. Yeah.
the camera doesn't do it justice because it's not it's not that it looks dull. It's kind of like a bright, very
It's almost like a
illuminating
slightly
orange.
darker, like wildflower honey kind of
Oh
color.
yeah, yeah,
Like a lightly, like just kind of a step up from kind of like your traditional lighter kind of honey color, but it's got a nice off white head.
yeah.
Wow.
The aroma is fantastic. It is the first couple of things that are
Yeah. Well,
jumping out to me are,
mystery solved. There's oak.
yeah, right.
That's,
It smells a little spicy. It smells like berry twigs to me. There's a little bit of like a citrusy bergamot kind of thing going on too. And for a
mhm.
beer that they describe in a lot of places as malty in the balance, which we'll probably find out on the palate, the aroma is actually
Yeah.
more hop and oak forward to me.
Yeah, I would say so too. Yeah, there's like a little, there's just like a touch of like fruity esters dancing in the background. It's kind of somewhere in the like, you know, peach, apricot, kind of realm.
Yeah, I get a little bit of that ethyl hexanoate, a little bit of kind of a red apple
Yeah.
too. It's not as aggressive as a lot of the English counterparts of this style of beer, but it's there.
Yeah. Oh man, on the palate, this thing is all right. There's, wow. This is. I know you got us a pretty good, cold stored, relatively good example, but this thing has got some oak. Wow, it's
It's
got
really
some
nice.
oak, but the pine is really coming through too. But there's also, but I think you're right. There's this little kind of, there's this kind of little hint of toffee that's starting to kind of become present.
Yep, a little bit of a bread crust, kind of
Hmm.
untoasted bread crust. Um, yeah, little toffee, little just caramel. It doesn't have. I'm not perceiving any diacetyl. I get diacetyl in all the English versions, and so this is like a much crisper version of toffee, if there is such a thing. It's not like super buttery.
Mm, right. No, I mean, it's possible to have it there and for it to be well integrated. So I think in lots of the tastings that we've done, we've realized there are styles across the board, whether it's English or Irish or or Scottish beers, and some of them they seem to kind of play into the beer really well and create kind of these interesting confectionery flavors. And there's others where it's like you could have just told me you put the Aroxa diacetyl spike in this and it just smells
Yeah,
like that, like it does in a an international pale lager or in a something like that. But it might just be well integrated here and kind of just, I think especially when you're playing with toffee and you're playing with caramel, that's just something that you maybe when you're tasting caramel you're not thinking butter, but it's part of what makes up caramel, right? It's kind of
yeah,
that weird like if you say something's in a beer, is it supposed to be there? And it's like, well, if it's creating this larger experience, then maybe you're not really supposed to taste it on its own, but because you're experiencing this kind of larger kind of different kind of flavor experience, it means that you would not be experiencing it without whether it's diacetyl or whether it's an addition of vanilla, or something like that. I think with these pastry stouts, that's kind of the big thing, right? You want to put what's in there, and then people are like, all right, where's my coconut, where's my vanilla, my cocoa nibs, etc. And
yeah.
if they don't get it, then it's just like a failure. And it's like, well, if it's supposed to taste like this pastry, I don't go and tasting chocolate chip cookies and thinking, all right, where's my vanilla? Like, but but people put vanilla extract in there, but
Absolutely.
it creates kind of this overall profile of a flavor that our brain kind of puts all these things together, and it just creates this one thing, this one perception.
There's a this is like the whole berry bush to me. It's got
Yeah, I think you're right about.
a little
I
bit of dark
it.
berry, the leafiness, the
Yeah,
woodiness, the twigginess,
yeah.
all of it.
That's something that's a descriptor that I think I'm looking to definitely get better at. Kind of got the dried pine needle, kind of the like American hop character, kind of thing down. But yeah, there really is kind of this like what they call earthy, or what they call or woodsy. Um, but I think also, I don't know, for me personally, there's also, I used to literally live in the forest. And so I think if I mentioned some descriptors, people would be like, I have no clue what you're like. I don't know what a white fir, pine needle tastes like.
Right.
you know, so I think that's the other hard part too, is you're trying to meet in the middle somewhere. That can be hard to describe.
Well, and I think for particularly for people around us, a good reference point is pine. But where it stops short is it's not a resiny beer. Like it's not like pine resin, like you would get in some American pale ales or IPAs. It's just more like dried pine needles, like you said. You're not getting the like super oily,
Hmm.
resiny characteristic. It's more like a fresher dried pine needle.
Yeah.
Mm. That is delightful,
Yeah.
though, and the way the oak comes into play, like there's a little bit of I don't know where some of that twiggy hop character begins and the oak, you know, ends or whatever it may be. So there's a little bit of kind of mild spice character that is maybe partially attributed to that. But also, wine people talk about grip a lot when they're talking about tannins and the structure of the beverage. And this just feels like it. That this beer has grip. It has structure. It's not flabby. It's crisp. It's got just a little bit of kind of tannic quality that reminds me of, um, well, if you have a lot of beers that are fermented in oak or have kind of an oak character, you get used to that tannin character. But in a beer that's this light, it's more like the tannin from a tea, which is why I said bergamot earlier, or like a black tea, um, is very close to that for me.
Yeah. But then the bitterness, is to me is quite soft, playing with the, because you get the grip from the oak, and then you're kind of thinking, okay, like here comes those IBUs, but then it just kind of like finishes relatively soft. I would be very curious. We've mentioned something like this before, but kind of I wonder if maybe the water profile has changed over the years to kind of, because if you're kind of working in this kind of English style, people always think Burton on Trent, high sulfate, high mineral content, that the snatch, that snappy bitterness. But I wonder, what happens when you introduce oak? Like, then what sort of decisions do you have to make from a recipe standpoint? So you're not just like, here's this super snappy bitterness, and there's going to be some light like tannic astringency from oak, and then you're just like, well, hopefully the malt helps, but that they've got three kinds of crystal in here for some for a reason.
Well, and
It's not just for color.
And we don't know everything about the process, but in the flavor, what we kind of glean from it is, yeah, it seems like they're not using the hardest like Burton on Trent style water. It doesn't have that like sulfury snatch character, and is it's also not like that chalky um, kind of drying sensation.
Mm.
And maybe that's a choice that they have to make if they're going to use a lot of oak too, because you wouldn't want that to compound where it feels like you're um, you know sucking on a tongue depressor, or
Yeah.
something something so drying, that it's not pleasing. But yeah, I don't know exactly how to encapsulate it, but you're exactly right. Where it's like you feel the oak afterburners kind of kick in mid palate, and then it's not that the beer has no finish or vanishes, but I think the caramel malts, the crystal malts, kind of save the day. They round off the back end of the palate. They leave you with this balance of oak tannin and my very mild sweetness. That's really a joy to drink because it just kind of lingers there.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
Wow. And I mean, the right when I smelled this, right when I tasted this, I mean, we've said it before. This is kind of in that. This is kind of in our range that we really like our food pairing beers to be IBU range, kind of in the ABV range, the kind of toasted level, the caramel, but also this hop character, not overly sweet, not overly bitter. Um, so I think there's a lot of really fun things to, we'll obviously give our few that we do, but I think there's a lot you can do with this. Um, Obviously, we're studying for Master Cicerone, so we'll start off with a cheese. I think Murray's Irish Cheddar is going to be a great choice for this. There's going to be a light, this grassy character that's going to play well with all of these woodsy characteristics that we've been describing. There's a light fruit character in the cheese that maybe that and along with some of those background esters can maybe draw each other out and give each other a little bit more of a punch. And then once you're getting into kind of lighter, not super aged cheddars like that, the kind of more of a buttery character you're going to get. And again, like we said, that's just going to be a welcome sight in a style like this in English beers. I'm not going to shy away from that kind of character in this kind of beer.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. Kind of
Yeah.
just a really pleasant middle of the road cheddar is going to be outstanding with this. You don't want to go too sharp. Um,
Yeah.
the beer will disappear a little bit. You don't want to go too mild, like just like super mass manufactured cheddar cheese, because
Mm.
the the cheese won't taste like all that much. Maybe it would be good with a bunch of other stuff going on the plate or whatever it might be. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have anything
Well,
more elaborate than that.
all right. Then where did you land on for savory?
So I want to. The beer is light enough in body that I want to make a little salad with this. And so we're gonna massage some kale. I want cranberries in the dried cranberries in the salad, and you can plump those up in the vinaigrette if you want to serve the salad warm or whatever. But I really want to match with that really ephemeral berry character that I'm getting. That is not like in my face by any means, but I want to pull out some of that kind of black currant, red currant character you can get from some English hops. Um, yeah, so like a cranberry, lemon, vinaigrette, kale salad with some slivered almonds. There's a really, once you've kind of massaged kale and you've internally balanced it in the salad with vinaigrette, the bitterness is not aggressive, much like this beer. I think they're like medium to medium low bitterness that are just kind of like a nice, pleasant um, compliment. And then, yeah, it's a very simple dish, but also the lemoniness and the vinaigrette kind of looping back in with some of that tea like hop character that I was getting, that I think would be really nice, like squeezing some lemon into your Earl Grey, or even having like
Mm.
even kind of like a black iced tea character with some lemon, would be really cool. So that's kind of a simple dish, but I don't even know that I would add I mean, you could get away with a really lightly prepared protein if you wanted to do some chicken or something. I don't think that that would be too out of pocket, but I think that
Yeah.
that kind of light bitterness of the kale, the fruitiness of the cranberry and the lemon, um, the lighter nuttiness of a slivered almond. You know, we're not putting some high flavored nuts in there, um, or something that's too bitter would be a really good simple interplay. So yeah, kale salad with cranberry lemon vinaigrette.
Yeah, I like that, and I think with my pairing, I think it's going to kind of show the range that we were that we were talking about, because this is not a pairing that I would have come to theoretically if I had not just tried it. I remember we were studying for advanced Cicerone. I think one of us gave an essay question, and it was, here's a dish, name three styles that you think would go well with it. Um, and we didn't really come to a consensus on much, and it seemed like there were a couple styles where we were kind of like, I don't know. And I was like, you know what, we just got to try it. Like, so let's just go out and we'll find, and one of them was, and it was and the dish was a lamb gyro. And one of them was one of the styles was route beer. I think another one was like Maibach. And then the other one was uh, strong bitter.
Mm.
And I remember I couldn't find a strong bitter, and I just thought, well, I'll just get London Pride, just a little bit lower ABV, uh, and I that was easily the best of the three, and I was so shocked. I could not believe how good it was. And so once you're getting into a little bit stronger ABV, probably a little bit stronger of a hop profile, very similar malt profile, plus adding some oak. My worries about those potentially being often in terms of intensity goes right out the window. You've got all this kind of earthy, kind of woodiness to play with. All of the mint that you're getting. That's going to be sprinkled onto a dish like that. All of those kind of herbs that you get in Greek preparations. Any fruit character that you get from this is going to just be lit up with the tzatziki and kind of that creamier kind of dairy and ester kind of complementary interplay. All of the caramel, all of the toffee. I can confidently say that's very much so going to complement the lamb. And the lamb's not a super. It's not going to be a super fatty, preparation. I think even for most, Greek places that serve it, it's usually like a blend, of lamb and beef. Because I think if you just did lamb, it would probably just be a little, too dry, especially how thin, they're trying to cut and serve it. So even though there's a little bit of a blend, I think you're still going to get, I still think that you're going to get enough fat in there where it's not going to kind of be like this weird kind of dried meat and then kind of like this, gripping beer. But then again, once you're getting all of those, I think oak is something that actually is really, to me, kind of fits under the almost like can be almost like a contrast, and even borderline like can have like some cutting effect when you
Yeah.
when you're getting things that are creamy, when you're getting things that are fatty. I think it can kind of have this similar kind of experience to bitterness. Maybe not in the same kind of actual physical way that it does, but when you dry out, when you get that drying sensation, all of a sudden things aren't as sweet. Maybe things aren't as sort of fatty or savory in that way, and is going to bring an absolute brightness. That's going to, I think, especially be a nice interplay off of the lamb, off of the meat.
Well, that's the same theory. We already talked about wine a little bit, but the reason why
Yeah.
you get like a big burly cab with some tannin going on is a great steak pairing. Is it's you got the big fatty steak and the tan. I think the tannins actually do have kind of a cutting
Mm.
power to them when you're talking about some fattiness. So that same theory on a smaller scale applies there. That's a really wise pairing.
All right, what'd you come up with for dessert?
I might have forced myself into it a little bit because I started with cranberries in the salad, but I wanted to keep that cranberry thread. Um, and cranberries are kind of like, they're sweet, but they're also tart and they're tannic.
Mm-hmm.
The skins of them are tannic too. So and you can have savory preparations and sweet preparations. So I'm sticking with that, and I want to do
Yeah.
cranberry biscotti.
Mm.
As just my little dessert. It's kind of, you got it's kind of crumbly in a way. It's hard. You got to chew through it, and the beer can help you loosen that up a little bit, which is a nice textural thing. Those most biscottis not too sweet. Like some of them can be dipped in chocolate or whatever it may be, and you could, I think, an interesting like drizzle to maybe put on it, maybe not too much, but would be white chocolate. So do cranberry and white chocolate. Um, and yeah, I just think carrying the same things that we loved about cranberries in the salad over to the dessert, but we're making this not absurdly sweet, kind of crumbly is not the right word. It's like a hard cookie almost. But
Yeah.
as you eat it, you need to kind of loosen it up a little bit. So it's the perfect kind of vehicle for, people always ask, like, when you're eating beer with food, do you take a sip of the beer first and then eat the meal? Do you do them both at the same time? Like, how exactly do you do it? And I think you should experiment with all the different versions. You should get a taste of some things separately. You should try it with both a little bit in the mouth at the same time and see. Try eating the meal and kind of like, or eating a bite of the food and finishing with the beer to see if that leaves some good lingering pleasantries. But in this case with biscotti, I think that could be a nice vehicle for just breaking up that kind of hard biscotti character. So yeah, cranberry biscotti, white chocolate drizzle optional.
Mm-hmm. No, I think the white chocolate takes it to the I think that takes it to the next level. I think just adding kind of that um, that kind of a product as a canvas for all the different things that could possibly um, go atop that. I think that's what makes it. I think that's what makes it great. I landed on. I was kind of in. I thought about biscotti because I kind of was thinking almond might be interesting, and then I kind of thought, okay, well, why don't we work with marzipan? So kind of did some research around that, and there's a British cake called a British Battenberg cake. And it's essentially the cake interior kind of just looks like your standard kind of like yellow cake, but it actually just takes a lot of preparation. You like dye them different colors, and then you're cutting them up so that you have a checkered kind of look to
Mm,
the cake, where it's like every other color. But the once you've cut all of them together, then you need something to bind the two levels together, and they use apricot jam to bind them together, and then it's just a very light drizzled kind of like icing of just marzipan over
yeah,
top. And so, I was just like marzipan, almond with the caramel, with the toffee, the apricot jam with just kind of acting like that ester. You could change that out for something else. You could do something interesting like orange marmalade. I think would be something super duper interesting, especially in a kind of somewhat British inspired beer. That's a note that we get in plenty of best and strong bitters of the commercial examples that we study. So I think just leaning into any sort of that kind of jam is going to be really really good, and just didn't sound like an overly sweet cake. Now,
yeah,
and I'm kind of thankful for that. Didn't go too. Because this isn't, they, like you said, they kind of were describing this really malty, this really kind of what you would perceive as being a sweeter beer, but it's really a lot more balanced than one is led to believe.
yeah. I like the apricot idea because you pointed out a little bit of kind of a stone fruit ester character, and this beer for its style is not as outwardly fruity as some of the other versions of a style that's kind of
Mm.
like this. It does have, we're getting a little bit of apple, a little bit of berry, a little bit of apricot, whatever it may be. But yeah, let's just like crank it to 11 on the stone fruit real quick without getting too sweet, and maybe that'll bring out more of that fruity character, which is a very similar strategy to what we were doing with the white chocolate, which I think is going to hopefully bring out a little bit more of that apple type ester, um, and stuff like that. So that sounds really nice. I mean, I put almonds in the savory, but almonds could be in the biscotti too. That just seems like a
I was,
supernatural
yeah,
fit in either
absolutely,
preparation.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think this is again the when you see these kinds of styles and you can get them fresh. I mean, these are just your just go experiment with these kinds of beers. They're just really in a good spot for food pairing. We could probably do an entire episode just doing food pairing with beers like this or styles, close or reminiscent to things like that. And even for next week, I don't think we're still kind of sticking to the kind of like amber-ish, a little bit of malt, a little bit of hops. For next week, we decided to pick this beer. Not thinking that everybody's necessarily going to be able to get it, but it's a collab between Wayfinder, Bierstadt Lagerhaus, and Heater Allen. It's called Golden Tiger, and it's a Czech amber lager, Pilat Mave, 13 degree. So any Czech amber lager that, if you are lucky enough to be able to buy one and find one, just count yourself lucky. So I was really glad that we were able to find some, and all of these breweries, we would feature any of their beers on their own, but the fact that they all came together and did this is something really special. So we're going to be very, very happy to feature this one next week.
Yeah, Czech style lagers in the US are undergoing a little bit of a renaissance. So hopefully there's a version of it, of a Czech half dark, Czech amber, near you that you can pick up. And every pocket of the country has its own lager specialties. So hopefully you're close enough to one of those pockets that you can grab one, because I think the collab is probably limited a little bit to the West Coast. So like Scott
Mm,
said, just know that we're not picking that beer thinking everyone can get it. We really want to investigate the style a little bit, because you
yeah.
don't come across it every day. And so hopefully you get something that's kind of close, and and enjoy it with us. So that's the next one on the docket.
Yep. I agree. Well, cheers, everybody. Another great beer in the books. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you've tried this beer before, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who watch this that have. Let us know what you think is going to pair well with this. Let us know. Let us know your thoughts. We love answering people's questions when they leave us comments or leave us suggestions for beers or styles that they'd want us to try. So just feel free to hit us up, and we're always happy to respond. And we will see you next time. Cheers.
And if you haven't had this beer before in a while, pick it up,
Oh,
revisit.
revisit. Yeah.
It's so good. Flagship February is coming up. Let's participate.
Oh, there we go. Yes, let's go out on that. Flagship February. Cheers.
Cheers.